I wasn't meant to be at the full moon ball. Omegas like me were only permitted to serve, never to participate, to pour wine, to collect empty glasses, to remain invisible. And yet there I was, trembling behind a marble column as the music swelled around me. My heartbeat matched the rhythm of the drums, a wild thing trying to escape my chest. From the shadows where I hid, I watched them. The aristocracy of the Lycans, dressed in their finery, moving like liquid silver under the crystal chandeliers. Their laughter echoed off the high ceilings, sharp and dangerous as broken glass. These were the people who had owned me since birth, who had branded me an Omega, who had deemed me unworthy even to meet their gaze. And just like that, everything changed when the music stopped. The crowd parted like a sea before him. Kale, the Lycan King. His presence commanded the room, shoulders broad beneath his midnight jacket adorned with silver threading that caught the light with every step he took. His jaw was sharp enough to cut, his eyes the color of amber fire. Power rolled off him in waves that seemed to press against my skin. I should have looked away. Before he could sense me watching, before one of the guards noticed me lingering too long in one place. Without thinking, I picked up an abandoned tray of drinks and moved toward the edges of the ballroom, keeping my eyes downcast as I'd been taught since childhood. What followed was the moment that would shatter my world forever. As I slipped between dancing couples, a hand reached out and caught my wrist. My tray crashed to the floor, crystal shattering in a symphony of destruction. The entire ballroom fell silent. "You," a voice said, deep and commanding. My eyes traveled up slowly, past a hand that could easily crush my bones, up an arm corded with muscle, to meet those amber eyes. The Lycan King himself was touching me. Time stood still as his gaze locked with mine. The space between us burned with something I couldn't name. Without warning, his nostrils flared slightly, and something shifted in his expression. Recognition, confusion, hunger. "What is your name?" he asked, and the question seemed to fill the entire hall. My voice trembled when I finally found it. "Elara, Your Majesty." The air thickened around us as he continued to hold my wrist, his thumb now making small circles against my pulse point. My breath caught in my throat as heat bloomed beneath my skin where he touched me. "She's just a servant, Your Majesty," came a sharp voice from beside us. Lady Isolde, the king's advisor, glared at me with undisguised contempt. "An Omega, not worth your attention." Despite that, the king didn't release me. Instead, his grip tightened slightly. "Leave us," he commanded, his eyes never leaving mine. A beat later, Lady Isolde and her entourage backed away, their expressions a mixture of shock and outrage. Yet no one dared contradict him. As the crowd watched in stunned silence, Kale raised my hand to his lips and pressed them against my knuckles. The room went completely still, not because of the impropriety of a king touching a servant, but because of what happened next. The moment his lips touched my skin, a pulse of energy surged between us, visible to everyone in the room as a flash of silver light. I gasped as something inside me shifted, ancient and powerful, something I didn't know existed within me. Her wolf pressed forward and she let it happen. Wait. Her wolf? I didn't have a wolf. I was an Omega, human in all the ways that mattered. We were servants to the Lycans, not one of them. And yet, my body moved on instinct, taking a step closer to him rather than away, drawn by something primal I couldn't understand or resist. His eyes widened slightly, the only indication of his surprise, as he inhaled deeply. "Resonance," he whispered, so quietly that only I could hear. Before either could speak another word, shouts erupted at the far end of the ballroom. Guards were rushing in, weapons drawn. "Assassins!" someone screamed. As if fate demanded it, chaos erupted. The king released my hand and pushed me behind him, his body transforming instantly into a shield. Not only that, but something changed in the air around him. He was about to shift. "Run!" he growled at me, his voice already deeper, rougher. I didn't know what scared me more, the approaching danger or the protective fury radiating from the king. Deep down, I knew the truth. I should flee, disappear back into the shadows where I belonged. Yet my feet refused to move. In the span of a breath, the king's body began to change. His form rippled and expanded, bones cracking and reshaping as dark golden fur erupted across his skin. The transformation was mesmerizing, terrible, and beautiful. Before my eyes, he became the beast, a massive golden wolf, larger than any I had ever seen, with those same amber eyes that now glowed like burning coals. As his wolf surged forward, something pulled at me from within. A sharp pain lanced through my chest, doubling me over. My vision blurred around the edges as the sensation of claws raking through my insides intensified. No matter how hard I tried, I couldn't understand what was happening to me. Maybe it was fate, or maybe it was madness, but in that moment of terror and chaos I felt something awaken, something that had slept inside me my entire life. A hand grabbed my arm, yanking me backward. It was Mira, another servant who had been like a sister to me since childhood. "Are you insane?" she hissed, dragging me toward a servant's passage. "We need to get out of here." With every step he took away from the king, the pain in my chest worsened. I looked back over my shoulder to see the golden wolf tearing through black-clad figures, his movements a blur of deadly precision. Meanwhile, Mira pulled me deeper into the winding corridors of the servants' quarters, away from the sounds of battle. At the same time, my heart raced with confusion and fear. What just happened? I gasped when we finally stopped in the safety of our shared quarters. "The king touched you," Mira said, her face pale. "In front of everyone." She paced nervously, wringing her hands. "This is bad, Elara. Very bad." As the night stretched on, rumors spread through the servants' quarters like wildfire. The assassination attempt had been thwarted, but several nobles had been injured. The king had personally killed 3 attackers in his wolf form. And what's worse, he was asking for me. To make things worse, every servant in the palace now looked at me differently. Some with envy, others with suspicion, but most with fear. No one knew what to make of what had happened, least of all me. That night, as I lay in my narrow bed, the memory of the king's touch lingered on my skin like a burn. Something had awakened inside me. Something wild and untamed that whispered dangerous promises. The mark on my wrist where he had touched me tingled with a strange warmth. Her bones remembered him. As the mark tingled, her soul answered. These thoughts weren't mine, yet they echoed through me with the certainty of truth. I pressed my hands against my chest, feeling my heartbeat, wondering if it was still just mine or if something else now lived within me. Come morning, my life as I knew it ended. Guard Captain Thorne himself came for me, his scarred face impassive as he delivered the news that chilled my blood. "By order of King Kale, you are to be moved to the royal wing," he stated flatly, as if this weren't completely unprecedented. "Why?" I asked, my voice small. Thorne's expression revealed nothing. "Because he has chosen you." Her world tilted. Something inside her shifted. And just like that, everything changed. The royal wing was nothing like the servants' quarters. Sunlight streamed through tall windows, catching dust motes that danced in the air like tiny stars. I stood frozen in the center of a chamber larger than the entire dormitory I'd shared with 5 other Omegas, overwhelmed by the opulence surrounding me. Golden fixtures, silk tapestries, a bed that could fit 4 people comfortably. Captain Thorne had left me here with terse instructions. Do not leave this room, and nothing else. No explanation for why the Lycan King had summoned me. No hint of what awaited me now. The bruise-like mark on my wrist where the king had touched me last night pulsed with warmth. I traced it with my fingertips, remembering the shock that had passed between us. Resonance, he had called it. As the silence stretched, I explored my new prison. Because that's what it was, no matter how luxurious. The doors were guarded. The windows overlooked a sheer drop to the cliffs below. A gilded cage was still a cage. Without warning, the double doors swung open. I turned, expecting the king, but instead found myself facing Lady Isolde, the king's advisor who had tried to dismiss me at the ball. Her silver hair was pulled into a severe knot, her pale eyes cold as winter frost as they assessed me. "So this is what fascinated him," she said, circling me like a predator. "Nothing remarkable that I can see." My gaze dropped to the floor out of habit. For 20 years, I'd been conditioned never to meet the eyes of my betters. But something inside me, that same something that had awakened at the king's touch, rebelled. With a deep breath, I raised my head and met her stare. As if pulled by a string, Lady Isolde stepped closer, her nostrils flaring. "What are you?" she hissed, reaching out to grab my chin. The moment her fingers touched my skin, she recoiled as if burned. Something like fear flickered across her features before she masked it with contempt. "There's a bath drawn for you through that door," she said, gesturing to a side room. "Make yourself presentable, the king will see you at sunset." After that, she left without another word, the doors closing with a heavy thud behind her. In the bathing chamber, a steaming tub awaited, the water scented with oils I'd only smelled when preparing baths for nobles. I undressed slowly, wincing at the sight of my body, too thin from years of meager servants' rations, marked with old scars from punishments I'd endured. As I sank into the hot water, I wondered what the king would think when he saw me. Would he be disappointed? Would he realize his mistake and send me back to the kitchens? A part of me hoped for exactly that. At least in the servants' quarters, I understood the rules, knew my place. Yet even as these thoughts crossed my mind, something inside me rebelled against them. The woman in the water wasn't just a servant. She was something more. I could feel it in my bones, in the strange new warmth that lived beneath my skin. While the forest held its breath for night to fall, I emerged from the bath and found clothes laid out for me. A gown of deep blue silk that felt like water against my skin when I slipped it on. It fit perfectly, as if made for my body. When I caught my reflection in a polished silver mirror, I barely recognized myself. The woman staring back had my features but looked regal. The truth unraveled slowly as I studied my reflection. I'd never been permitted fine clothes or mirrors before. Servants were meant to be invisible, not to admire themselves. For the first time, I noticed the high arch of my cheekbones, the unusual amber flecks in my otherwise dark eyes, the proud set of my jaw. I looked nothing like the other Omegas. Between one breath and the next, the doors opened again. This time it was him. King Kyle entered alone without guards or attendants. He'd changed from his formal attire of the previous night into simpler clothing. A black tunic that emphasized the breadth of his shoulders, leather breeches, boots. Less a king and more a warrior. The sight of him made my heart race, my palms dampen with sweat. Beneath the moonlight streaming through the windows, his eyes gleamed with that same amber fire I remembered. For a long moment, he simply looked at me, his expression unreadable. "Do you know why you're here?" he finally asked, his voice low and rough. I shook my head, not trusting myself to speak. "I've been searching for you," he said, taking a step closer. "For years." My world tilted again. Nothing he said made sense. "Me? I'm nobody, Your Majesty. Just an Omega servant." His laugh was sharp, almost cruel. "Is that what they told you?" Another step closer. "What do you know about your parents, Elara?" The question caught me off guard. "They died when I was an infant, in service to the palace." "Lies," he said simply. "All of it." With his scent in the air, pine and smoke and something wilder, my thoughts spun in confusion. "I don't understand." "No, you wouldn't." His expression softened slightly. "They've kept the truth from you your entire life." Before he could explain further, the doors burst open again. A tall, broad-shouldered man with a jagged scar across his face strode in, his expression thunderous. "The council demands an explanation," he announced without preamble. "Rumors are spreading. They say you've taken an Omega as mate." Her breath caught at the word. "Mate?" King Kale didn't turn, his eyes still fixed on me. "Lord Darius, You forget yourself. You do not burst into my private chambers unannounced." The newcomer, Lord Darius, glanced between us, his lip curling in disdain when his gaze landed on me. "This is madness, Kale. If you needed a bed warmer—" In that moment, something snapped inside me. A growl rose in my throat, a sound I'd never made before, inhuman and fierce. Both men turned to me in shock. As the echo faded, I pressed my hand to my mouth, horrified. What was happening to me? King Kale's expression transformed into one of satisfaction, as if I'd just confirmed something for him. "Leave us, Darius," he commanded, "and inform the council I will address them tomorrow." Lord Darius hesitated, his eyes narrowed on me. "You know what she is," he said quietly. "You know the laws." "I am the law," Kyle responded, his voice deadly soft. "Do not make me repeat myself." After the Lord departed, shadows danced between us as Kale slowly circled me, his eyes never leaving mine. "Tell me, Elara, have you ever wondered why you're different from the other Omegas? Why you heal faster? Why you're stronger?" My thoughts raced back through my life. How cuts and bruises vanished overnight. How I could carry loads that made other servants struggle. How I never seemed to tire as they did. I'd always attributed it to luck or determination. "What am I?" I whispered. Instead of answering, he reached for my hand, turning it to expose the mark on my wrist. It had darkened since this morning, looking less like a bruise now and more like a pattern, a crescent moon surrounded by what appeared to be claw marks. "This is a bond mark," he said, tracing it with his thumb. "It appears when a Lycan recognizes their true mate." His eyes met mine. "But it should be impossible for an Omega to bear such a mark." As fire bloomed beneath my skin where he touched me, I struggled to process his words. Lycans could only mate with other Lycans. Everyone knew this. Which meant, "I'm not human," I breathed, the realization both terrifying and strangely liberating. "No," he confirmed. "You're Lycan, royal-born if I'm not mistaken, and the daughter of my father's greatest enemies." Her instincts surged at his words. Something ancient awakened in her blood, the heritage she never knew she possessed. "The Lunar Highlands," he continued, watching my face carefully. "Your parents led the rebellion there 20 years ago. They were killed for refusing to bow to my father, but their infant daughter vanished from the battlefield." His thumb continued its hypnotic circles against my mark. "You were meant to die that day." My chest ached with grief for parents I couldn't remember, and a heritage stolen from me. "Why am I alive then? Why was I raised as a servant in your palace?" "That," he said, his expression darkening, "is what I intend to find out. Someone betrayed both our families that day." With every word he spoke, memories stirred in me, not my own, but belonging to something else, something that lived inside me, dormant until now. The wolf he claimed I possessed. Kale must have seen the confusion in my face because he stepped closer, his hands coming to rest on my shoulders. "Your wolf has been suppressed but not destroyed. I felt her last night when we touched." She recognized me. A small, fierce smile touched his lips. "As mine recognized you." The heat of his hands seeped through the silk of my gown, warming my skin, my blood. Our proximity made it difficult to think clearly. "Why tell me this?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Why not kill me if I'm your enemy?" His smile widened, revealing teeth too sharp to be fully human. "Because you're also my mate, the only one who can stand as my equal." His hand moved to cup my cheek. "And because I need you, Elara of the Lunar Highlands, to help me save our people." As though fate whispered ancient secrets between us, I felt myself leaning into his touch, drawn to him by forces I couldn't yet understand. "Tomorrow," he said, his voice a low rumble that sent shivers down my spine, "we begin your training. It's time for you to meet your wolf." Her name hung in the air between them. Not Elara the servant, not Elara the Omega, but Elara of the Lunar Highlands, a name with power, with history, a name with teeth. Dawn broke with sounds I'd never noticed before. Birds singing from half a mile away, servants whispering 3 rooms over. The steady rhythm of guards pacing the corridor outside my door. My senses had sharpened overnight, overwhelming me with information I had no idea how to process. I pressed my palms against my temples, trying to quiet the cacophony. The silken sheets against my skin felt too rough suddenly, the gentle morning light too harsh on my eyes. Whatever Kale had awakened in me was growing stronger by the hour. "Focus on my voice," came a command from the doorway. I hadn't heard him enter, yet there he stood, King Kale, dressed for training in a simple leather vest that left his muscled arms bare, marked with scars that told stories of battles I couldn't imagine. "Close your eyes," he instructed, moving closer. "Choose one sound and focus only on that." I obeyed, letting my eyelids fall shut. From the chaos of sensory input, I latched onto the most steady, most grounding sound I could find. Kale's heartbeat, strong and unwavering. As I concentrated on that singular rhythm, the other noises faded to a manageable hum. My breathing steadied. "Good," he murmured. "You're a natural." When I opened my eyes, he stood directly before me, close enough that I could see flecks of gold in his amber irises. "Today we find your wolf," he said, offering his hand. Without thinking, I reached for him, our fingers intertwining with an ease that belied our vastly different stations. My mark, the crescent moon and claw pattern, had darkened further overnight, now resembling an intricate tattoo rather than a bruise. Rather than leading me through the palace corridors, Kale guided me toward a concealed door behind one of the tapestries. It opened to reveal a narrow stairway carved directly into stone. "The old ways," he explained, noting my confusion. "Passages built by my ancestors before the palace expanded. They connect to the sacred grounds." We descended in silence, the air growing cooler with each step. The stairway opened into a tunnel lit by strange blue crystals embedded in the walls. Their light cast Kale's features in sharp relief, making him appear more predator than man. "Where are we going?" I finally asked. "To the Heart Grove. It's where young Lycans traditionally meet their wolves for the first time." He glanced back at me. "Under normal circumstances, this would have happened when you were 13. The delay..." His jaw tightened. "It will make the process more challenging." The tension broke when we emerged from the tunnel into blinding daylight. I blinked rapidly, adjusting to the brightness, and found myself standing in a grove of ancient trees with silver bark and leaves that seemed to whisper as they moved in the gentle breeze. At the center stood a ring of stones, each taller than a man, engraved with symbols I couldn't decipher. The air here felt different, charged with something primal and alive. Magic, perhaps, though I'd never believed in such things before. "These grounds are sacred to all Lycans," Kale said, his voice hushed with reverence. "Protected by blood oaths and ancient spells. This is where we are most connected to our wolves." In the quiet that followed, he led me to the center of the stone circle. "Kneel," he instructed. The ground beneath my knees was soft with moss and wildflowers. Kyle knelt facing me, our knees almost touching. "Your wolf has been caged your entire life," he explained. "Suppressed by herbs they must have mixed into your food since infancy. But she's there, waiting. The bond mark proves it." My heartbeat quickened. "How do I find her?" His hands reached for mine, palms up. "Give me your wrists." When I offered them, his thumbs pressed against the pulse points on both wrists. The mark on my right wrist flared with heat at his touch. "Close your eyes," he commanded again. "Picture a door inside your mind, a door that's been locked your entire life." I obeyed, concentrating on the image of a heavy wooden door with iron bands. "Now imagine unlocking it," his voice continued, deeper now, resonating through my bones. "The key is your blood. The blood of the Lunar Highlands flows in your veins. Royal blood. Alpha blood." As the sky darkened with gathering clouds above us, I focused on the imaginary door, picturing a key materializing in my hand. A key made of moonlight and silver. Call to her, Kyle urged. She's been waiting for you. I inserted the key into the lock, turning it with my mind. The door swung open to reveal nothing. Empty darkness. Frustrated, I opened my eyes. There's nothing there. Kale's expression didn't change. You're still fighting it. Part of you is afraid. He wasn't wrong. Terror mingled with anticipation in my chest. What if I opened that door and lost myself completely? What if the servant girl I'd been for 20 years simply ceased to exist? I don't know how to be what you say I am, I admitted. His hand slid up my arms to grip my shoulders. Your blood knows. Trust it. The wind shifted around us, carrying his scent, that intoxicating mixture of pine and smoke and wild things. My mark burned hotter, the pattern seeming to pulse with my heartbeat. Try again, he said, his voice lower now, almost a growl. But this time I'll guide you. Before I could respond, he leaned forward and pressed his forehead against mine. The contact sent electricity racing through my veins. Suddenly, I wasn't alone in my mind. Kyle's presence unfurled like smoke, powerful and ancient. I felt the brush of something else too, his wolf, a massive golden creature with eyes like fire. It regarded me curiously, circling the edges of my consciousness. Under the weight of his stare, I closed my eyes again and returned to that mental door. This time, it swung open to reveal a pair of eyes staring back at me, silver as moonlight, wild with fury and hunger after years of imprisonment. My wolf pressed forward, and this time I let her come. White-hot pain ripped through me as something fundamental shifted inside my body. My bones ached as if they might shatter, my skin burned as if scraped raw. I cried out, falling forward against Kale's chest. Don't fight it, he whispered against my hair, arms encircling me. Let her through. The pain intensified, tears streaming down my face as I struggled to breathe. Just when I thought I couldn't bear another second, something inside me surrendered. The pain vanished instantly, replaced by a rush of power so intense it stole my breath. Her voice trembled with newfound strength. I feel her. My wolf surged through my consciousness, not the mindless beast I'd feared, but an intelligent, ancient presence. She carried memories that weren't mine, running beneath a full moon, the taste of fresh kill, the howls of packmates echoing across snow-covered mountains, the Lunar highlands, my true home. When I opened my eyes, the world had transformed. Colors were sharper, scents richer. I could taste the minerals in the air, feel the life force of the trees surrounding us. And Kale, he glowed with power, his aura a golden fire that called to something primal within me. There you are, he murmured, satisfaction evident in his voice. His thumb brushed away tears I hadn't realized I'd shed. Your eyes have changed. How? My voice sounded different even to my own ears, deeper with a resonance it had never possessed before. Silver, the mark of the Lunar bloodline. His expression softened with something like wonder. They haven't been seen in a generation. As fire bloomed beneath my skin where he touched me, I felt my wolf respond to his nearness, curious, wary, but also drawn to him and his golden wolf in ways I couldn't articulate. What happens now? I asked. His hand moved to cut my cheek, his touch gentle despite the raw power I could feel thrumming beneath his skin. Now you learn who you truly are, Elara of the Lunar Highlands, and what it means to be mate to the Lycan King. The moment their eyes locked, amber to silver, something fundamental changed between them. Not just the bond, not just the awakening, but the balance of power itself. My training began immediately. No longer confined to my chambers, I followed Kale through hidden parts of the palace grounds, training arenas concealed by ancient magic, libraries filled with Lycan history, meditation gardens where elders communed with their wolves. Your strength will return quickly, Kale explained as he taught me basic fighting stances. Your body remembers what your mind doesn't. He was right. My muscles seemed to anticipate movements I'd never learned, my reflexes sharper than should have been possible after years of servitude. My wolf guided me, her instincts merging with mine more with each passing hour. Between one breath and the next, I found myself pinning Kale to the training mat, my forearm pressed against his throat, a move he hadn't taught me. His laugh rumbled through his chest. "That's Lunar style, your father's technique." There was admiration in his eyes as he effortlessly reversed our positions, his body now pressing mine into the mat. "But you're still learning." The weight of him above me sent heat coursing through my veins. My wolf stirred, responding to his proximity with a mixture of challenge and something far more dangerous, desire. As though fate whispered warnings between us, I turned my face away. Why did our families fight? If we're meant to be mates, why were we enemies? Kyle released me, sitting back on his heels. Politics, power, the usual reasons kings go to war. His expression darkened. My father was not a good king, nor a good man. The Lunar clan challenged his rule, as was their right. He responded with slaughter. "And yet you searched for me," I said, sitting up to face him. "The daughter of your father's enemies." "I am not my father," he replied simply. "And the old prophecies were clear. Only when the two royal lines unite can the Lycan kingdoms know true peace." My thoughts spun at his words. "You chose me because of a prophecy?" His hand reached out, fingers tracing the line of my jaw. "I chose you because when I became king 5 years ago, I vowed to be different, to heal the wounds of the past." His thumb brushed my lower lip, sending shivers down my spine. "Finding you was the first step." The tension broke when a sharp knock sounded at the training room door. Kyle rose in one fluid motion, his expression instantly guarded. Lord Darius entered, his scarred face twisted with concern. "Forgive the interruption, my king, but there's news from the northern border. The Silverclaw Pack has declared independence. They refuse to recognize your rule." His eyes flickered to me with clear suspicion. "They claim to have found their true leader." Kale's eyes narrowed. "What leader?" "A child," Darius replied, his gaze still fixed on me. "A girl they claim is the last surviving member of the Lunar royal line." Her soul answered the unspoken question hanging in the air. If I was here, who was the imposter claiming my birthright? "It seems," Kale said slowly, "that someone else knows you survived." The guards never saw me leave. They were focused on threats from the outside, not the woman within who now moved with predatory silence. My newfound memories guided me through secret passages my mother had shown me as a child. Passages I somehow remembered existed behind the very walls of this palace. The first hidden door yielded to my touch as if welcoming home a long-lost daughter. Narrow stone corridors stretched before me, lit only by occasional cracks in the mortar that allowed thin beams of light to filter through. I followed the sounds of battle, my heightened senses guiding me. My blood sang with ancient power. 20 years of suppression melted away with each step I took toward the conflict. My wolf, so long dormant, now paced restlessly beneath my skin, hungry for freedom. Without warning, pain lanced through my chest, sharp and immediate. I gasped, leaning against the cold stone wall as my knees threatened to buckle. This wasn't my pain, I realized with startling clarity. It was Kyle's, transmitted through our incomplete bond. He was injured. The knowledge sent a surge of protective fury through me so intense it almost knocked me breathless. My fingers scraped against rough stone, nails lengthening into claws without my conscious command. Truth be told, I had no idea what I was doing. I had no training, no experience with the shift, only newly awakened instincts and fractured memories. Yet here I was, racing toward danger instead of away from it, driven by the need to protect my mate. My mate. The thought should have terrified me, this sudden primal claim on a man I barely knew. Instead, it felt like recognition of something that had always been true. The passage ended at a small wooden door. Beyond it, I could hear shouts, growls, the clash of metal on metal. I placed my hand against the wood, feeling the vibrations of battle through my palm. As the bond pulsed between us, I closed my eyes and focused on Kyle. The connection between us stretched like a silver thread, guiding me to him. He was close, just beyond this door, fighting for his life. With a deep breath, I pushed through. The scene that greeted me was chaos incarnate. The council chamber had been transformed into a battlefield. Bodies, some human, some half-shifted, some fully wolf, lay scattered across marble floors now slick with blood. The air was thick with the copper tang of it, with rage and fear and wild magic. In the center of it all stood Kale, magnificent in partial shift, his body still mostly human but elongated, covered in patches of golden fur, his face a haunting blend of man and wolf. He fought back-to-back with Captain Thorne against a circle of attackers dressed in black, their faces concealed by masks. One of them had just driven a blade into Kyle's side, the source of the pain I'd felt. Even wounded, he fought with lethal grace, claws tearing through one attacker's throat before the man could strike again. No one noticed me at first. I used their distraction to slip along the wall, searching for a weapon. My hand closed around the hilt of a fallen dagger, its weight unfamiliar yet somehow right in my grip. A growl rose in my throat as one of the masked assassins circled behind Kale, raising a crossbow aimed at his exposed back. Without thinking, I lunged. The distance between us closed in an instant, faster than humanly possible. My body moved on instinct, driven by something older and wilder than conscious thought. The dagger found its mark between the assassin's ribs just as he fired. The bolt went wide, embedding itself in the ceiling instead of Kale's spine. As the man fell, his blood hot across my hands, Kale whirled. His amber eyes widened at the sight of me standing over his would-be killer, my chest heaving, blood-spattered and fierce. "Elara," he growled, the sound more wolf than man. "I told you to stay hidden." A beat later, my world exploded into pain. One of the remaining attackers had noticed me, the newcomer, the threat. Something struck me hard between the shoulder blades, sending me sprawling across the blood-slick floor. The dagger skittered from my grasp. I rolled, gasping, to see a massive black wolf looming over me, jaws open and ready to tear out my throat. In that moment, survival instinct overrode everything else. Between one heartbeat and the next, fire erupted beneath my skin. My bones cracked and reshaped themselves, muscles tearing and reforming. The pain was excruciating, yet beneath it lay an exhilarating sense of rightness, of becoming what I was always meant to be. As the wolf lunged for me, I completed my first shift. The world transformed through new eyes, sharper, clearer, alive with scents and sounds my human form could never have detected. My body felt powerful, sleek, and natural in a way I'd never experienced before. Silver-white fur rippled across my form, muscles coiled with strength I never knew I possessed. The black wolf's attack met not helpless human prey, but a she-wolf of royal blood. My jaws snapped closed on his foreleg with crushing force. Bone shattered between my teeth. The taste of his blood was hot and metallic as he howled in pain and rage. We circled each other, snarling. He was larger, more experienced, but I was faster, driven by instinct and the desperate need to protect my mate. When he lunged again, I darted beneath him, teeth finding the vulnerable softness of his belly. What followed was blood and fury and the ancient dance of predators. I fought with a savagery that should have frightened me. Instead, it felt like coming home. Through it all, I was peripherally aware of Kale, his golden wolf now fully shifted, tearing through the remaining attackers alongside Thorne and guards who had finally arrived as reinforcements. When the last enemy fell, silence descended on the chamber. Only our panting breaths and the occasional whimper of the wounded disturbed the stillness. Kale's wolf approached mine slowly. He was magnificent, larger than any wolf I'd ever seen, his coat the color of burnished gold in sunlight. Blood matted the fur around a wound in his side, but his movements showed no weakness. As he drew near, my wolf lowered her head slightly, not in submission, but acknowledgement. His scent enveloped me, rich and complex, pine forests after rain, sun-warmed stone, and something uniquely him that called to something uniquely me. His muzzle nudged mine gently before he turned, padding toward a side door. The invitation was clear. Follow me. Still in wolf form, I trailed him through corridors now emptied of servants and nobles alike. Guards we passed straightened, bowing their heads to their king, but their eyes widened at the sight of me, a silver wolf where no silver wolf should be. Eventually, we reached a part of the palace I'd never seen, a vast garden enclosed by high stone walls. Moonlight bathed the space in silver, illuminating paths that wound through ancient trees and flowering bushes heavy with night-blooming blossoms. In the center stood a pool fed by a small waterfall. Kyle shifted back to human form beside it, his naked body gleaming like bronze in the moonlight. The wound in his side was already healing, the edges knitting together before my eyes. I hesitated, suddenly aware of my predicament. I had shifted for the first time, driven by instinct and necessity, but I had no idea how to shift back. As if sensing my dilemma, Kale smiled. "Think of your human form," he said softly. "Picture yourself as you wish to be. The shift follows intent." I closed my eyes, concentrating on the feeling of having 2 legs instead of 4, of fingers instead of claws. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the fire returned, less painful this time but still intense as my body reshaped itself once more. When I opened my eyes, I was human again, and completely naked. Heat flooded my cheeks as Kale's gaze traveled over me with undisguised appreciation. "You're even more beautiful than I imagined," he said, his voice rough with emotion. Before I could respond, he was beside me, a cloak materializing from somewhere to drape around my shoulders. His touch against my bare skin sent electricity racing through me. "You shifted," he murmured, pride evident in his voice. "A perfect silver wolf, just like your mother." It felt— I searched for words, like remembering something I never knew I'd forgotten. His fingers tangled in my hair, now loose and wild around my shoulders. "The first shift is the hardest. It will become easier with practice." "Those men," I said, remembering the battle. "Who were they?" Kale's expression darkened. "Agents of the Crimson Dawn, a faction that believes Lycans should rule not just our territories, but all human lands as well." His hand moved to cup my cheek. "They've opposed my more moderate policies since I took the throne. This isn't their first assassination attempt, but it's their boldest." The implications settled over me like a physical weight. "Why now?" "Because of you." His amber eyes held mine, intense and unblinking. "They fear what our union represents, the joining of bloodlines, the healing of old wounds." "I killed one of them," I whispered, the reality of it finally hitting me. "Maybe 2. And saved my life in the process." His thumb stroked my lower lip. "You fought magnificently, like you were born for battle." Maybe I was. The words emerged with surprising certainty. In my memories, my parents were training me, even as a child. Not just to shift, but to fight to lead. Kyle nodded slowly. "The Moonborn were warriors first, rulers second. It's in your blood." As the wind shifted through the garden, it carried new scents to me. The sweet perfume of night-blooming jasmine, the earthy richness of soil, and something else, something that made my newly awakened wolf stir with interest. Kale's desire, potent and unmistakable. My body responded instantly, a liquid heat pooling low in my belly. The bond between us pulsed stronger than ever, urging completion. "What happens now?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "Now," he said, moving closer until our bodies nearly touched, "we must make a choice." His hand slid beneath my cloak to rest against the small of my back, his skin burning against mine. The bond remains incomplete. To finish it would mean no turning back, for either of us. The question hung between us, heavy with implication. Yet beneath his commanding exterior, I sensed vulnerability. He was giving me a choice, something I'd rarely been afforded in my life. "And if I choose to complete it?" I asked, needing to hear him say it. His eyes darkened, pupils expanding until only a thin ring of amber remained. Then you become my queen in truth, my equal, my mate for life. Such simple words for such a monumental shift in fate. Yesterday I had been a servant, nameless and powerless. Tonight I stood naked beneath the moon, a silver wolf reborn, being offered a crown and a kingdom. Yet it wasn't power that tempted me. It was him, this man who had recognized me even when I didn't know myself, who looked at me now with hunger and hope in equal measure. As the sky darkened toward dawn, I made my decision. I let the cloak fall from my shoulders, bearing myself completely to him. "I choose you," I said simply. What followed was a kiss that burned hotter than the shift itself, his mouth claiming mine with a possession that should have frightened me but instead felt like sanctuary. His arms encircled me, lifting me as if I weighed nothing, carrying me toward the softly glowing palace. "Tonight," he growled against my lips, "you become mine and I become yours." Her heart skipped as she realized the truth. She had found her home not in a place, but in a person. Morning light filtered through gossamer curtains, painting golden patterns across Kale's sleeping form beside me. I traced them with my fingertips, marveling at how everything had changed in the space of 3 days. From servant to mate, from nameless to queen to be, from powerless to something else entirely. The bond mark on my wrist had transformed overnight into an intricate silver pattern that resembled a crescent moon wrapped in thorny vines. Kyle bore a matching mark now, our bond completed in a night of passion that had left me both exhausted and exhilarated. I slipped from the bed, careful not to wake him. His body bore the evidence of both battle and our lovemaking. Scars old and new, and marks my own teeth and nails had left in moments of abandon. My cheeks flushed at the memory. From the balcony of the royal chambers, I could see the entire kingdom spread before me, the palace grounds giving way to the city below, and beyond that, the dark line of forest that marked the border of Kale's territory. Somewhere far beyond that forest lay the Lunar Highlands, my ancestral home, now governed by one of Kale's appointed lords. The sound of approaching footsteps pulled me from my reverie. Kale's arms wrapped around me from behind, his chest warm against my back, his scent enveloping me in security and desire. "Having second thoughts?" he murmured against my ear. I leaned into his embrace. "Not about you. Never about you." I turned to face him. "But everything else? It's happening so fast." His amber eyes studied me with that intensity that never failed to make my heart race. "Today won't be easy," he warned. "The formal announcement of our mating to the court will cause reactions." "They'll oppose me," I said, not a question but a statement. Kale's thumb traced the line of my jaw. "Some will. The old guard, those loyal to my father's ways. They've spent 20 years believing the Moonborn line was extinct." As the wind shifted, bringing the scent of rain from distant mountains, something else reached me. Voices from the courtyard below. I moved to the edge of the balcony, Kyle beside me. In the private training yard, a small group had gathered. Young Lycans, barely adolescents, were practicing shift control under the watchful eye of an older woman. One girl, smaller than the others, struggled visibly, her form flickering between human and partial wolf in painful spasms. "Who is she?" I asked, watching as the others stepped back, some with expressions of disgust. "Lyra," Kyle replied, his voice tight. "An Omega." The word hit me like a physical blow. I thought Omegas were human servants. "A convenient lie," he said bitterly. "Omegas are Lycans born with unstable shifting abilities. Under my father's reign, they were relegated to servitude, forbidden to develop their wolf sides, fed wolfsbane to suppress their true nature." His hand found mine, squeezing gently. "Like you were." Below, the instructor barked something harsh at the struggling girl, who collapsed to her knees, shifting back to fully human form with obvious pain. Without thinking, I stepped away from Kyle, moving toward the door. "Where are you going?" he called after me. "To help her," I replied simply. By the time I reached the training yard, still dressed only in a silk robe hastily thrown over my night clothes, the situation had deteriorated. The young girl, Lyra, lay curled in a ball while the instructor stood over her, berating her weakness. "Enough," I said, my voice carrying across the yard with surprising authority. All eyes turned to me. The instructor, a gray-haired woman with a severe expression, stiffened. "This is a closed training session," she said coldly. "And I am interrupting it," I replied, moving past her to kneel beside the trembling girl. Up close, I could see she was perhaps 13, with dark hair and frightened eyes that widened at my approach. "You're the king's new mate," she whispered, awe and fear mingling in her voice. I smiled, helping her to sit up. "I am, and like you, I was told I was an Omega." I held out my wrist, showing her my bond mark. But that was a lie. The instructor made a sound of protest behind me. "My lady, this is highly irregular. Leave us," I said without turning around. To my surprise, she obeyed, ushering the other young Lycans away with hissed commands. Alone with Lyra, I took her small hands in mine. "The shift hurts because you're fighting it," I told her gently. "They've taught you to fear your wolf, haven't they?" She nodded, Kale's expression gathering in her eyes. But through our bond, I felt his irritation. Is deformed. "Lord Galen, I don't recall the council having the authority to summon their king." "Of course not," Lord Galen said smoothly. "Merely a request to discuss matters of succession and tradition. I'll be there shortly," Kyle replied, his tone making it clear the conversation was over. As the nobles retreated, I helped Lyra to her feet. "We'll continue this another time," I promised her. Her eyes darted between me and Kyle. "They don't like that you're helping me," she whispered. Kale placed a hand on her shoulder. "All the more reason to continue," he said with a gentle smile that transformed his usually stern features. "Go on now, and no more wolfsbane tea no matter what Elder Maris says." After she left, Kale turned to me, his expression grave. "You've made quite an impression." "Was I not supposed to help her?" I asked, suddenly uncertain. He shocked me by laughing, a rich sound that warmed me from within. "Oh, you were exactly what she needed." His smile faded slightly. "But you've also announced your intentions to the court more clearly than any formal proclamation could." "My intentions?" "To change things," he said simply. "To challenge the old ways." As we walked back toward the palace, I felt the weight of unseen eyes upon us. "The council meeting," I began hesitantly. "Should I be there?" Kyle considered this. "Traditionally, mates aren't present for council business." A slow smile spread across his face. "But then, nothing about us is traditional, is it?" 2 hours later, dressed in a gown of midnight blue that Kale had commissioned for me, "Silver would be too obvious," he'd said with a wink, I entered the council chamber at his side. 12 nobles sat around a circular table, their conversations dying abruptly at our arrival. "Gentlemen," Kale addressed them, guiding me to a seat beside his at the head of the table. "My mate joins us today." The silence that followed was deafening. Lord Galen recovered first. "Your Majesty, council meetings are private. My mate is my equal in all things." Kyle interrupted, his voice pleasant but laced with steel. "What concerns the kingdom concerns her." Another counselor, younger than the others, with sharp features and calculating eyes, leaned forward. "Then perhaps she can address our primary concern directly." His gaze fixed on me. "The identity you claim." I met his stare evenly. "I claim nothing but what I am." "And what exactly is that?" he pressed. 3 days ago you were a servant. Today you sit at the king's right hand, wearing the crest of the royal house." Kale's anger simmered through our bond, but I placed my hand over his, stopping him from intervening. This was my battle. 3 days ago I was lied to about who I was, I corrected calmly. "As I have been my entire life. But blood remembers what the mind forgets." To emphasize my point, I let my eyes shift, maintaining human form but allowing the wolf's amber glow to manifest in my gaze. A ripple of unease passed through the council. "A parlor trick," Lord Galen scoffed. "Any Lycan can manage eye-shifting." I smiled, though there was nothing warm in it. Perhaps a more convincing demonstration, then. Without waiting for a response, I extended my hand, palm up, over the center of the table. Drawing on the new power that flowed through my veins since completing the bond, I called to something deeper than just my wolf. The air above my palm shimmered, then coalesced into a small orb of silver light. Moonfire, the rare magic that had given the Moonborn their name and power. It was a skill I shouldn't have known, yet somehow did, as if the knowledge had been sleeping in my blood, waiting to be awakened. Gasps echoed around the table. One counselor actually pushed his chair back in alarm. "The lunar gift," he whispered, fear evident in his voice. Only the
Lord
Moonborn
Galen
royal
insisted,
line could
though his
manifest
face
it.
had paled considerably.
Impossible.
The bloodline was extinguished. King Alaric made certain... My father made many mistakes, Cale cut in, his voice dangerously soft. Believing he could erase an entire lineage was perhaps his greatest. As the tension stretched, I closed my fingers, extinguishing the moonfire. The sudden absence of its silver glow left the chamber feeling darker, colder. "The royal hunt is in 3 days' time," Cale announced, changing the subject with practiced diplomacy. "After the hunt, there will be a formal ceremony to present my mate to the kingdom. I expect all of you to be there, with your families." It was clearly a dismissal. One by one, the counselors rose, bowing to Cale with varying degrees of sincerity. None bowed to me. As they filed out, Cale leaned close to whisper in my ear, "You continue to surprise me. The lunar gift hasn't been seen in a generation." I hadn't known I could do it either. The power had simply answered when I called. "Is that a good thing?" His smile was both proud and predatory. "It's a dangerous thing, which makes it very good indeed." The last counselor to leave paused at the door. It was the younger one who had questioned me directly. Unlike the others, his expression held more fascination than fear. "Lady Elara," he said, using my title for the first time. "You should know. There are those of us who remember the old stories. Not all in the kingdom welcomed King Alaric's purge of the Lunar Highlands. Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me to wonder if I'd just encountered an ally or a more subtle kind of enemy." Cale's hand found mine beneath the table. "The royal hunt will be your first public appearance as my mate," he said. "Every noble family in the kingdom will attend." "To judge me," I added. His fingers tightened around mine. "To witness the beginning of a new era." His amber eyes held a fierce light. An era where no Lycan, Omega or otherwise, is denied their birthright. As fire bloomed beneath my skin from his touch, I realized I was no longer afraid of the future that awaited us. Whatever came next, whatever enemies we faced, we would meet them together. Her wolf stirred within her, not with fear but anticipation. The blood of the Moonborn queen flowed in her veins, awakened at last, and with it, the power to reshape a kingdom. The royal hunt dawned clear and cold, the kind of autumn morning where frost clings to every blade of grass and breath hangs visible in the air. From my chambers, I watched as servants erected colorful pavilions at the forest's edge. Nobles arrived in procession, their banners snapping in the wind, a display of loyalty to the crown, though I knew many harbored doubts about the woman who would wear it beside Cale. "Are you ready?" Maya asked, fastening the last silver clasp on my hunting attire. Unlike the servant girl I'd known her to be, Maya was actually Cale's younger sister, tasked with watching over me during my years of ignorance. Another piece of the puzzle that was my life, slowly falling into place. I smoothed my hands over the supple leather of my riding pants, the soft fur collar of my cloak. As ready as I'll ever be. The garments were beautiful, but practical. Midnight blue embroidered with silver thread that formed subtle crescent moon patterns along the edges, not quite claiming my Moonborn heritage, but not hiding it either. A statement only those looking carefully would notice. "Remember," Maya said, adjusting the silver circlet that now rested in my hair, "the hunt is more than sport. It's politics. Every interaction will be scrutinized." I nodded, well aware of the stakes. 3 days of intensive lessons in court protocol had prepared me for the mechanics of the event, but nothing could prepare me for the weight of so many eyes, so many judgments. As the forest held its breath for my arrival, I descended to the courtyard where Kyle waited. He stood magnificent atop a massive black stallion, his formal hunting attire emphasizing the breadth of his shoulders, the lean strength of his form. When he saw me, his smile transformed his face from stern monarch to the man who whispered tender words against my skin in the privacy of our chambers. "My queen," he said, extending his hand to help me mount the silver mare beside him. The possessive pride in his voice both thrilled and terrified me. The journey to the hunting grounds passed in a blur of formalities, introductions to noble families whose names blended together, polite conversation that masked assessment, curious stares from those brave enough to look directly at me. I felt the weight of every glance, the hidden meaning behind every carefully chosen word.
Lord Galen's wife, a thin woman with eyes like chips of ice, examined me as one might inspect a questionable piece of fruit. "How fortunate that His Majesty found you after all these years," she said, her smile never reaching her eyes. "Fate works in mysterious ways, Lady Galen," I replied evenly, meeting her gaze without flinching. "Indeed." Her eyes flickered to my hand resting on the pommel of my saddle, the silver bond mark visible on my wrist. Some might say suspiciously mysterious. Before I could respond, horns blared from the edge of the forest, signaling the start of the hunt. Cale appeared beside me, his presence immediately cooling Lady Galen's boldness. "Remember," he murmured as we rode toward the tree line, "you need not participate in the hunt itself. Many of the mates simply follow the procession and enjoy the spectacle." I raised an eyebrow. "And when have I done anything the traditional way?" His laugh, warm and genuine, drew curious glances from nearby riders. "Never. Thank the moon for that." His expression grew more serious. "Just be careful. Some of the elder Lycans can be competitive during the hunt." The hint of concern in his voice warmed me even as I recognized the warning beneath it. This wasn't just about catching prey. It was about establishing dominance, about showing strength. And as Cale's mate, my performance would reflect directly on him. Deep down, I knew the truth of what he wasn't saying. I might be Moonborn, but my abilities were untested, my training minimal. I was a novice among masters. Once the hunting party entered the forest, formality dissolved. One by one, riders dismounted, handing their horses to waiting attendants. Then, with varying degrees of grace, they shifted. The clearing filled with wolves of every color, from pure black to russet to gray. Cale's golden form stood largest among them, commanding without effort. With a deep breath, I called to my wolf.
Between us,
The shift came easier now, a warm rush rather than the painful fire of my first transformation. Silver fur rippled across my body as I dropped to all fours, my senses expanding exponentially. The forest exploded into vivid detail, scents I couldn't have detected in human form, sounds too faint for human ears. I could smell the nervous sweat of the attendants, the lingering perfume on Lady Galen's fur, the rich earthiness of the forest floor. More importantly, I could smell our quarry, a wild boar, its musk heavy and distinct through the trees. At some unspoken command, the hunting party moved as one, flowing through the undergrowth with practiced silence. I followed, staying close to Kyle's golden form, learning from his movements. The exhilaration of running with my pack, for that's what they were, despite their politics and prejudices, was unlike anything I'd experienced. My body seemed to know what to do, responding to instincts buried deep in my blood. So focused was I on the hunt that I almost missed it. A scent foreign and wrong, cutting through the forest musk. I slowed, head lifting as I tried to identify it. Blood. Fresh blood, but not animal. Human, or Lycan in human form. I veered from the hunting party, following the scent despite Cale's questioning nudge through our bond. Something urged me forward, some instinct I couldn't ignore. The metallic tang grew stronger as I approached a small ravine. There, half hidden among fallen leaves and broken branches, lay a young boy, no more than 12 or 13.
Blood soaked through his simple clothing, the garb of a commoner, not a noble's son. His face was pale with shock, eyes wide with terror as I approached. An Omega, I realized, recognizing the faint scent of wolfsbane that clung to him. A servant who had wandered too far from the palace. The boy whimpered as I approached, clearly expecting me to attack. Instead, I nuzzled his hand gently before shifting back to human form. "It's all right," I said softly, crouching beside him. "I won't hurt you." "Lady Elara," he gasped, recognition dawning in his eyes. "The King's mate." "What happened?" I asked, examining his injury. A deep gash in his leg that bled steadily. "Who did this to you?" "I was gathering kindling," he stammered. "There was a man. He had a knife. Said Omegas shouldn't be in the forest during the hunt, that it was bad luck." Anger flared hot in my chest, but I kept my expression calm as I tore a strip from my undershirt to bind his wound. "What's your name?" "Tomas, my lady." "Well, Tomas, it seems we're both where others think we shouldn't be." I managed a reassuring smile as I tied off the makeshift bandage. "Can you stand?" He tried but cried out as his injured leg gave way. Without hesitation, I swept him into my arms. Though thin, he was still a substantial weight, but my Lycan strength made it manageable. "Hold on," I told him, beginning the trek back toward the hunting pavilions. As we emerged from the trees, my arrival with a bloodied child in my arms caused immediate commotion. Servants rushed forward, nobles stared, whispers erupted like wildfire. "Get the royal physician," I commanded, my voice cutting through the chaos with surprising authority. "Now." To my surprise, they obeyed without question. I carried Thomas to a nearby bench, gently setting him down as attendants hurried to bring water and clean cloths. "What happened?" demanded a harsh voice. Lord Galen pushed through the gathering crowd, his expression thunderous. "Why is there an Omega servant disrupting the royal hunt?" Before I could answer, Thomas spoke up, his voice thin but clear. "I was attacked, my lord, by a man in the forest." "Nonsense," Lord Galen scoffed. "Who would bother attacking a servant boy?" "Someone who believes Omegas bring bad luck during a hunt," I replied coldly, repeating Thomas's words. "Someone with prejudice rather than sense." A tense silence fell. In the stillness that followed, I felt, rather than heard, Cale's approach. He had shifted back to human form and dressed, his expression unreadable as he took in the scene. "My mate speaks true," he said, his voice carrying across the clearing. "Whoever harmed this boy will answer for it." Lord Galen's face flushed with anger. "Your Majesty, surely there are more important matters than a servant's misfortune?" "Is there?" Kyle challenged, stepping closer to the older man. "Enlighten me, Lord Galen. What matters more than justice for my subjects, all my subjects?" The noble had no answer. As the royal physician tended to Thomas, I felt a strange sensation, a tug at the edges of my awareness. Looking up, I noticed we had drawn an audience beyond the nobles. Servants and commoners had gathered at the periphery, watching with undisguised interest. No, not watching, witnessing. In that moment, I understood something vital. My actions spoke louder than any proclamation. By treating an Omega boy as worthy of care, I had made a statement that no amount of political maneuvering could match. The rest of the hunt passed in a blur of formalities. Kale and several others brought down the boar, a symbol of strength and provision that would be served at the evening's feast. But the whispers that followed me had little to do with the hunt, and everything to do with the boy I had carried from the forest. That night, as servants prepared for the feast, Kale summoned me to his private study, a room lined with ancient texts and maps that I had only glimpsed before. He stood at a large table, documents spread before him, his expression troubled. "What's wrong?" I asked, closing the door behind me. He looked up, his amber eyes reflecting the firelight. "I've been investigating your origins," he said without preamble, "and I found something unsettling." My heart quickened. "Tell me." These are records from the Lunar Highland campaign, he explained, gesturing to the papers before him. My father's personal accounts, guarded carefully since his death. I approached cautiously, drawn by the need to know yet afraid of what I might discover. Here, Kyle said, pointing to a list of names. The record of the dead from the final battle. My eyes found my own name near the bottom of the list. Elara, infant daughter of Lord Thorn and Lady Selene of House Mooncrest. Confirmed deceased. Confirmed, I whispered, the word bitter on my tongue. Kale's finger moved to a margin note beside my name, written in a different hand than the rest of the document. Secured by order of D. Fate, demands balance. D, I murmured. Who is D? I believe, Kale said slowly. It was Lord Darius. The name hit me like a physical blow. Lord Darius, the scarred warrior who had confronted Kale about me in the royal chambers, who had warned about the laws. But why? I asked, struggling to make sense of it. Why would he save me only to hide me as a servant? Kale's expression darkened. Politics, perhaps, or something more. He pulled another document forward, a genealogy chart so old the parchment had yellowed with age. This is the bloodline of the royal houses, mine and yours. I leaned closer, studying the intricate lines that connected names across generations. Slowly, a pattern emerged, places where the two lineages intersected, marriages that bound rival houses in uneasy alliances. There, Kyle said, his finger stopping at a point near the top of the chart. 10 generations ago, the houses were one, the Moonborns and the Sunfires, ruling together before the split that created 2 kingdoms. As the truth unraveled before us, I saw what he meant. We're distant cousins. More than that, he said gravely. According to the oldest prophecies, when the bloodlines rejoin, it heralds great change. His eyes met mine. Some would see that as a threat to the old ways. The implications settled over me like a physical weight. My survival wasn't random chance or even individual mercy. It was calculated preservation for some larger purpose. The elders knew, I breathed, pieces falling into place. They saved me because of what I represented. Not all of them, Kyle corrected. Only Darius, I think. And he hid you where none would think to look, in plain sight, stripped of your identity. His hand found mine across the table, our bond marks glowing faintly where they touched. You weren't saved out of kindness, Elara. You were preserved as a piece in a game spanning generations. As the wind shifted through the open window, carrying the sounds of celebration from the great hall below, a new resolve hardened within me. I was done being a pawn in others' schemes. Then let's play the game better than they expect, I said, squeezing his hand. Starting tonight.
Kale's smile turned predatory, matching the fierce determination that burned in my own heart. Tonight, he agreed. We show them exactly who they're dealing with. As she stood beside her mate, her past finally revealed, she felt something inside her shift. Not her wolf this time, but her purpose. She wasn't just fighting for herself anymore, or even for Kale. She was fighting for every Omega denied their birthright, for a kingdom divided by ancient prejudice, for a future where bloodlines united rather than divided. And heaven help anyone who stood in her way. The grand hall blazed with 1,000 candles, their light reflecting off polished marble and the jewels adorning the kingdom's elite. I stood hidden behind a heavy velvet curtain, watching nobles and dignitaries fill the space, their voices rising in a cacophony of speculation. They had come for my coronation, some eager to witness history, others hoping to see me falter. Breathe, Maya whispered, adjusting the silver circlet nestled in my elaborately braided hair. They're just people. People who want me dead, I murmured, counting at least a dozen lords and ladies who had openly opposed my ascension. Maya's laugh was soft but sharp. Only half of them, I'd say. The rest are simply waiting to see which way the wind blows. 1 week had passed since the royal hunt and the discovery of my true origins. 1 week of frantic preparation, political maneuvering, and midnight strategy sessions with Kyle. The news that I was not merely Moonborn, but the last surviving heir of the Lunar Highlands had spread through the kingdom like wildfire, igniting hope in some and hatred in others. "It's time," Maya said, straightening the train of my gown, a creation of midnight blue silk and silver thread that seemed to capture starlight with every movement. Unlike traditional coronation attire, it was designed for both beauty and function. If trouble came, I could fight. As if summoned by my thoughts of trouble, Lord Darius appeared at the edge of the antechamber. His scarred face was carefully neutral, but his eyes held something I couldn't quite decipher. "May I have a moment with Lady Elara?" he asked Maya, who looked to me for confirmation before reluctantly leaving us alone. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. This man had saved me as an infant, hidden me among servants, kept me ignorant of my heritage for 20 years. I should have hated him. Instead, I found myself curious. "You listed me as confirmed dead," I said finally, then ordered me secured. "Why not simply kill me?" His weathered face revealed nothing. Some lines should not be erased from the world, no matter the political cost. And yet you let me grow up as a servant, denied my heritage, fed wolfsbane to suppress my nature. I stepped closer, studying the face of the man who had shaped my destiny without my knowledge or consent. "That seems a particularly cruel form of preservation." "Cruelty would have been leaving you to your mother's fate," he replied, his voice low. "King Alaric wanted the Moonborn line extinguished completely. Those he didn't kill in battle, he executed publicly. Your parents' bodies were displayed at the city gates for a month." I flinched at the brutal image, but he continued relentlessly. "The only way to save you was to make you invisible. An Omega servant was beneath notice, beneath suspicion." For the first time, something like remorse crossed his features. "I never expected you to remain in that position for so long. When Alaric died, I planned to reveal your identity, but what?" I demanded. "But the kingdom was fragile, Kael's position tenuous. The old factions would have used you as a rallying point for rebellion." He sighed, suddenly looking older than his years. "So I waited, perhaps too long." Before I could respond, horns blared from the grand hall, signaling the ceremony's beginning. Lord Darius stepped back, offering a formal bow that seemed both mocking and sincere. "For what it's worth," he said as he straightened, "I believe you may be exactly what this kingdom needs." As the great doors swung open, I pushed his words aside, focusing instead on the sea of faces turning toward me. The grand hall fell silent as I began my solitary walk down the center aisle, toward where Kael waited upon a raised dais. Between one breath and the next, I abandoned the careful instructions I'd received about proper posture and pace. Instead, I walked as my wolf would, proud, powerful, unafraid. My gaze swept across the assembled nobility, meeting their stares directly rather than demurely looking ahead as tradition dictated. At the foot of the dais stood the Council of Elders, 12 ancient Lycans whose approval was traditionally required for any royal mate. Lord Galen among them wore an expression of barely concealed disdain. Kyle watched my approach with undisguised pride, magnificent in formal attire of black and gold, a crown of hammered gold set with amber stones resting on his brow. As I reached him, he extended his hand, helping me ascend the dais to stand beside him. "You look like a queen already," he murmured, his voice for my ears alone. Facing the assembled court, Kael spoke the traditional words of introduction, his voice clear and commanding. The ceremonial aspects progressed as planned, the pledges of loyalty, the formal acknowledgement of our mating bond, the presentation of ancient symbols of royal authority. Then came the moment I had been warned about. Elder Maris, the same woman who had berated young Lyra during training, stepped forward with a golden chalice. "By ancient custom," she intoned, "the mate of the Alpha King must prove worthy through the trial of blood." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. This custom had been mentioned during my preparations, but Kael had assured me it was rarely enforced in modern times, a symbolic gesture at most.
The look on Elder Maris's face suggested otherwise. "The chalice contains the blood of each elder," she continued, her cold eyes fixed on mine. "Only those of true royal blood can consume it without—" Through our bond, I felt Kale's concern, but beneath it ran a current of absolute faith in my strength. Meeting his eyes briefly, I lifted the chalice to my lips. The blood was bitter and burning, the wolfsbane component searing a path down my throat. For a moment, darkness edged my vision, my knees threatening to buckle as the poison fought against my system. My wolf surged within me, roaring defiance. I would not fail. Not here, not now, not in front of those who wished to see me broken. The moment their eyes locked, something ancient and powerful flowed between them. Kale's strength poured into me through our bond, his life force intertwining with mine to combat the poison. Straightening, I handed the empty chalice back to Elder Maris, whose expression had shifted from smug anticipation to disbelief. "The blood recognizes its own," I said, loud enough for all to hear. A beat of silence followed, then erupted into reluctant applause led by those closest to the throne. Elder Maris retreated, her challenge defeated but her hostility undiminished. The remainder of the ceremony passed without incident, culminating in Kale placing a crown upon my head, smaller than his but no less significant, crafted of silver with moonstones and sapphires that echoed my Moonborn heritage. "I present to you," Kale announced, "Queen Elara, trueborn of the Lunar Highlands, mate of my heart and co-ruler of the United Territories." The formal feast that followed was a dizzying parade of introductions and carefully worded conversations. I noted which nobles approached readily and which kept their distance, which offered sincere congratulations, and which merely mouthed the words while their eyes remained cold. As the night wore on, I found myself increasingly aware of Lord Darius, who watched proceedings from a shadowed corner. Unlike the other elders, he had abstained from adding his blood to the chalice. A subtle act of support? Or simply confidence that the other's contribution would be sufficient to expose any weakness? "Dance with me," Kyle said, appearing at my side and drawing me from my thoughts. "The court expects it, and I've waited all evening to hold you." On the dance floor, his hand at my waist guided me through steps I'd learned hastily over the past week. Our bodies moved in perfect synchrony, the bond between us humming with shared energy. "You did well with the chalice," he murmured, his lips close to my ear. "Though I could kill them for trying to poison you." "They're testing boundaries," I replied, aware of the many eyes watching us. "We knew they would." His hand tightened possessively on my waist. "Testing your life is beyond acceptable. And yet I survived, proving what they refuse to believe, that my bloodline is as royal as yours." I allowed myself a small smile, perhaps even more so. His laugh, warm and genuine, drew attention from nearby dancers. "Careful, my queen. Such talk borders on treason." The music drew to a close, but before we could return to the formal seating, a commotion erupted at the hall's entrance. Guards moved quickly to intercept a figure attempting to push through, a woman in simple clothing, her face lined with age and fear. "Please," she cried, her voice carrying across the suddenly hushed gathering. "I must speak with the king. My daughter. They've taken my daughter." I recognized her instantly, the mother of young Lyra, the Omega girl I had helped during training. Without hesitation, I moved toward her, Kale at my side. The guards parted at his gesture, allowing the woman to approach. "Your Majesties," she gasped, falling to her knees. "Forgive the interruption, but my Lyra was taken from our quarters this evening by masked men. They left this." She thrust forward a scrap of parchment marked with a crude drawing of a crescent moon crossed by a dagger. Kale's expression darkened as he examined the symbol. "The Crimson Dawn," he said, naming the faction that had attempted to assassinate him before our mating. "They've never targeted Omegas before," I said, helping the woman to her feet. "Why now? Why Lyra specifically?" The woman's tear-filled eyes met mine. "After you helped her during training, Lyra began to change. Her shifting became more controlled. She started teaching other Omega children." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "The old ones said she was becoming a threat to the natural order." As the blood pulsed in her veins, Elara understood with sudden clarity. This wasn't about Lyra at all. It was about her, a warning delivered through the most vulnerable target. "We will find her," I promised, the words emerging not as hope, but as certainty. Kale turned to Captain Thorne, who materialized from the crowd. "Assemble the royal guard. We hunt tonight." Gasps and murmurs spread through the hall at this unprecedented declaration. Royal hunts were ceremonial events planned weeks in advance, not emergency responses to a single missing Omega child. "Your Majesty," Lord Galen protested, stepping forward. "Surely this matter can be handled by the City Watch. The coronation festivities are concluded," Kyle finished for him, his tone brooking no argument. "The abduction of any of my subjects is an attack on the crown itself." His gaze swept the assembled nobles, suddenly sharp with suspicion. "Anyone involved will answer to me personally." As the celebration dissolved into chaos, nobles hurrying to demonstrate their loyalty while others sought quick exits, I felt a strange calm settle over me. My first act as queen would not be a diplomatic gesture or a ceremonial appearance, but a hunt for justice. Kale's hand found mine, our bond marks glowing faintly where they touched. "Together?" he asked, though he already knew my answer. "Together," I confirmed. Outside the palace, the full moon rose above the kingdom, casting silver light across rooftops and forest alike. My wolf stirred in response, eager for the hunt to come. As she gazed at the moon her ancestors had drawn power from for generations, Elara made a silent vow. She would find Lyra. She would protect the vulnerable. She would be the queen her parents had died believing she could become. And heaven help those who had dared to challenge her on her coronation night. Moonlight transformed the royal hunting party into silver-touched shadows as we moved through the lower district of the city. My coronation gown had been exchanged for fitted leather and wool, practical attire for the hunt ahead. The crown remained, a deliberate choice. Tonight, I hunted not just as a wolf, but as a queen. Captain Thorne led our group, 20 of the Royal Guard, Kale, myself, and Lord Darius, who had insisted on joining us despite his age. "The Crimson Dawn was once my concern," he'd said cryptically when Kale questioned his presence. "Old debts remain unpaid." The cobblestone streets gradually gave way to packed dirt as we descended into the poorest quarter of the city, a maze of tightly packed hovels where most of the Omega servants lived when not housed within the palace itself. Lyra's mother walked between Kyle and me, her back straight despite her fear. "Here," she said, stopping before a building barely distinguishable from its neighbors. "This is where they took her from." The structure was small but meticulously kept, a single room that served as sleeping quarters for 6 Omega children, Lyra among them. Now it stood empty, the other children having been moved to the palace for protection. Kyle's nostrils flared as he entered the space, taking in the lingering scents. "At least 3 intruders," he noted. "One of them wounded. There's blood near the window." I approached the small pallet that had been Lyra's bed, running my fingers over the rough blanket. Something caught my attention, a scrap of fabric wedged between the thin mattress and the wall. I extracted it carefully. "What is it?" Kyle asked, moving to my side. I held up my find, a piece of crimson cloth embroidered with gold thread, forming part of a symbol I recognized from history books in Kale's study. A rising sun pierced by a spear. "House Solaris," I murmured, the pieces clicking into place. "Your father's most loyal supporters during the conquest of the Lunar Highlands." Lord Darius approached, his expression grim as he examined the fabric. "Not just supporters," he corrected. "They were the executioners. Lord Solaris personally carried out the public deaths of your parents." The air in the small room seemed to thicken, charged with the implications of this discovery. House Solaris had been notably absent from my coronation, a slight that had been remarked upon but not pursued. "This changes our approach," Kyle said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "House Solaris holds lands to the east beyond the Ember Forest. If they've taken Lyra there, we'd need an army to breach their walls." Captain Thorne finished, his scarred face creased with concern. I closed my fingers around the fabric, the fine threading rough against my skin. Or we need stealth, I suggested. A small party could move faster, attract less attention. Kyle's eyes met mine, understanding passing between us without words. House Solaris had not just taken a child, they had issued a challenge to our rule, to our very union. This was personal. Captain, return to the palace with most of the guard and Lyra's mother, Kale commanded. Secure the remaining Omega children and inform the council that we're pursuing a lead. Say nothing of House Solaris. As the captain departed with reluctant obedience, Kale turned to the remaining guards. 4 of you will accompany us east. The rest create a distraction. Make it known that we're searching the western forests. Night deepened as we rode east, leaving the city behind for the wild territories that formed the border between Kyle's kingdom and the once independent Lunar highlands. The Ember Forest loomed before us, ancient and forbidding in the darkness. We should reach the edge of Solaris lands by dawn, Lord Darius said as we paused to rest the horses. Their main keep is built into the cliffside overlooking the Valley of Ash. A half-memory stirred within me at the name. I've been there before, I realized aloud. As a child, before the conquest. My parents took me to a gathering of the Highland clans. The recollection was fragmented, flashes of bright banners, the sound of many wolves howling in unison, my mother's hand warm in mine as she led me through crowds of strangers who bowed as we passed. The last summit of Alphas, Lord Darius confirmed, something like nostalgia crossing his weathered features. Your father called it to warn the clans about Alaric's planned invasion. Lord Solaris was there as an envoy of peace. A spy, you mean? Kale said bitterly. My father sent him to assess the Lunar Highlands' defenses. Lord Darius nodded. And 2 months later, Solaris led the vanguard that slaughtered half the Highland clans before they could unite. The weight of history pressed down upon me, not abstract events from dusty books, but my history, my family's blood spilled by the very house that now threatened a child under my protection. As the forest held its breath around us, I felt a shift within, not my wolf stirring, but something deeper, more primal. The lunar gift my ancestors had wielded, the magic that had allowed them to draw power directly from the moon itself. In that moment, I made my decision. I'm going ahead, I announced, already removing my riding cloak. Alone. Kale's protest was immediate. Absolutely not, we stay together. Lyra doesn't have time for us to skirt their patrols and approach cautiously, I argued. I can move faster in wolf form, through paths too narrow for horses. Then I'll go with you, he insisted. I shook my head. Your golden coat would be visible for miles. Mine blends with moonlight. I stepped closer, placing my hand on his chest. Trust me to do this. I know these lands in ways you can't. They're in my blood. His amber eyes searched mine, concern and pride warring in their depths. Finally, he nodded once, sharply. How will you find her? In answer, I extracted the small ribbon Lyra's mother had given me, the girl's most prized possession, carrying her scent. We'll follow at a distance, Kale said, conceding but not surrendering completely. Be at the eastern cliff face by dawn. If you haven't found her by then, I will, I promised, already feeling the pull of the shift beneath my skin. Between one breath and the next, my human form dissolved into silver fur and heightened senses. The forest exploded into vivid detail around me, every scent, every subtle movement now clear and categorized by instincts older than civilization. I nuzzled Kale's hand briefly before turning east, disappearing into the underbrush with silent steps. The Ember Forest earned its name from the curious red fungi that grew on many of its trees, glowing faintly in darkness like dying coals. By this eerie light, I tracked my way deeper into territory that felt increasingly familiar. My wolf remembered these paths, though I did not. Ancestral memory guiding my paws along hidden trails that had once belonged to the Moonborn clans. I avoided the main roads, sensing rather than seeing the Solaris patrols that moved through the forest in tight formations. As moonlight gave way to the first hint of dawn, I crested a ridge and beheld the Valley of Ash,
a sprawling depression in the landscape where nothing grew, the ground covered in gray-white dust from some ancient cataclysm. Built into the cliff face on the far side stood Castle Solaris, its stone the color of dried blood in the pre-dawn light. Movement caught my attention, a patrol emerging from a small side entrance in the cliff below the main castle. Among them, stumbling on weary legs, was a small figure with dark hair. Lyra. I crouched lower, observing as they led her toward a structure at the center of the valley, a circular platform of black stone surrounded by tall pillars. Even at this distance, I could smell the girl's fear, sharp and metallic on the morning air. As the wind shifted in my direction, I caught fragments of conversation. Full dawn for the ritual. Girl is the key. Blood will weaken the bond. A growl rose in my throat, which I quickly suppressed. They intended to use Lyra in some kind of ritual, one that apparently involved blood and had something to do with weakening a bond. My bond with Kale? The patrol reached the stone circle, securing Lyra to one of the pillars. Several members then departed, leaving only 2 guards with the girl. I assessed my options quickly. I could wait for Kale and the others, but that would mean leaving Lyra alone until dawn fully broke. Or I could act now, relying on surprise and superior speed. Her voice trembled as the guards tested her restraints. The space between them burned with the girl's fear, a scent that called to every protective instinct I possessed. Decision made, I circled the ridge, descending into the valley using natural formations for cover. The ash underfoot muffled my steps as I approached the ritual site from behind, keeping the rising sun at my back to cast my shadow away from the guard's line of sight. 20 paces from the platform, I paused, gathering my strength. Then I shifted, not to human form, but to something between. My fingers lengthened into claws, my teeth sharpened, but I retained the upright posture and vocal capabilities of a human. This partial shift was new to me, discovered accidentally during private practice sessions with Kyle. In this form, I possessed both human intelligence and Lupin strength, and looked terrifying enough to freeze most enemies in momentary shock. That shock was my advantage now. I burst from cover with supernatural speed, covering the distance to the platform before either guard could shout a warning. My claws found the throat of the first guard while my momentum carried me into the second, sending us both sprawling across the ash-covered ground. He recovered quickly, drawing a blade that gleamed with an oily substance I recognized immediately from its scent, wolfsbane extract. One cut from that would paralyze a Lycan's limbs within seconds. "Moonborn bitch," he snarled, recognition flaring in his eyes as he took in my partial form. "Lord Solaris said you might come yourself." "He was right," I growled, my voice distorted by my elongated jaw, "though he should have sent more guards." The man laughed, a harsh sound that echoed off the surrounding cliffs. "Who said we wanted to stop you?" A trap. Of course it was a trap. But knowing didn't change my course. Lyra needed me, and I would not abandon her. As the sky darkened toward dawn's full arrival, I feinted left, then lunged right, my claws slashing across the guard's extended arm. The blade fell from suddenly nerveless fingers, but not before it nicked my shoulder, sending fire racing through my veins. Wolfsbane. Not enough to paralyze, but enough to slow me. I staggered, fighting the spreading numbness, and used the last of my coordinated strength to tear through Lyra's bindings. "Run," I gasped, already feeling my partial shift destabilizing from the poison. "Get to the forest edge, King Kale is waiting." "Queen Elara," she whispered, tears streaming down her small face. "I knew you'd come." "Go," I insisted as voices and footsteps approached from the castle. "Now." She hesitated only a moment longer before bolting across the ash-covered valley toward the forest, running with the speed of desperation. I turned to face the approaching Solaris forces, knowing I couldn't outrun them with wolfsbane coursing through my system. The best I could do was buy Lyra time to reach Kale. A dozen soldiers formed a half-circle around the platform, their weapons trained on me. From their midst stepped an older man with iron-gray hair and cold eyes. Lord Solaris himself, I presumed. "The last Moonborn," he said, his voice like gravel.
How convenient of you to deliver yourself to us. I forced myself to stand tall despite the poison weakening my limbs. I am Queen Elara of the United Territories, mate to King Kale. Your actions constitute treason. Solaris smiled, the expression never reaching his eyes. No, child. My actions constitute restoration of the proper order. He gestured to the stone platform. Do you know what this is? I glanced at the circular structure, noting for the first time the ancient runes carved into its surface. A ritual site of some kind. The Severance Stone, he corrected. Built by the first Lycans to break bonds that were politically inconvenient. His smile widened. Your blood spilled here, under the dawn light, would dissolve your mating bond with Kale completely. A chill that had nothing to do with wolfsbane ran through me. The unified bloodlines threaten you that much? Prophecies are dangerous things, he replied simply. The Moonborn and Sunfire lines were separated for good reason. Together, they could undo centuries of carefully maintained power structures. As he spoke, I felt something stirring within me. Not my wolf, but the deeper magic I had only begun to explore. The lunar gift, responding to my desperation. Her bones remembered the ancient power that flowed through her lineage. As the mark tingled with awakening magic, she called upon the strength of every queen who had come before her. With the rising sun at my back and the moon's lingering power in my blood, I reached deep within myself, drawing on reserves I hadn't known existed. Silver light bloomed under my skin, pulsing outward in waves that pushed back the encroaching soldiers. Lord Solaris's eyes widened in genuine fear. Restrain her, he shouted, but his men hesitated, faced with magic they had only heard of in legends. In that moment of uncertain stillness, a howl split the dawn, deep, commanding, and unmistakably Kale. It was answered immediately by others, the royal guard, taking position around the valley's edge. You miscalculated, I told Solaris, the silver light growing brighter around me. You thought to separate us, but our bond can't be broken by ancient stones or spilled blood. As though fate whispered ancient secrets between us, I felt Kale's presence even before his golden wolf form crested the ridge, leading the charge down into the valley. Lord Darius and the guards followed, weapons drawn. Lord Solaris's forces scattered before this unexpected assault, their courage faltering at the sight of their king in his most fearsome form. As the battle erupted around us, I faced Solaris himself, the silver light of my awakened gift now focused into a palpable force between my hands. You killed my parents, I said, each word weighted with the power of truth. You tore apart the Highland clans. You orphaned countless children. He backed away, fear finally overtaking his arrogance. It was war, he protested. I followed orders. And now you've kidnapped a child to use as bait. The silver light intensified, responding to my rising anger. Where I come from, that deserves only one response. The lunar gift surged from my hands in a blinding flash, engulfing Solaris in silver fire that burned without consuming. The legendary judgment of Moonborn queens, used only against those who had committed unforgivable crimes against the clans.